Well, hello, welcome to the main part of our fourth lesson. Today we're going to talk about paideia, what this concept meant in the ancient Greeks. The term paideia referred to the rearing and education of the ideal member of the polis. The practical aspects of this education included subjects like the ones we know today, subsumed under the modern designation of the liberal arts. It means rhetoric, grammar, and philosophy, for example. It also included scientific disciplines like arithmetic and medicine. An ideal and successful member of the polis would possess intellectual, moral, and physical refinement. So, training in gymnastics and wrestling was valued for its effect on the body alongside the moral education which the Greeks believed was imparted by the study of music, poetry, and philosophy. Paideia was carried out by the aristocratic class who tended to intellectualize their culture and principles under the ideal of kalos ke agathos, beautiful and good. It has to be beautiful and good. The formation of a person, the education of a person will make of him someone beautiful, fine, and good, morally. In that sense, Greek paideia is the idea of perfection, the idea of excellence, arete. Aristotle gives his paideia proposal in Book 8 of the Politics, which is to be our reading today. Not yet, after the video. Well, we also have the version of paideia by the German American classicist Werner Jaeger, who traces the development of classic Greek thought and education. It is available on the bibliography link. You can click on it and search for it. And I recommend chapters 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so far we have seen what to do. And from now on, we will discuss how to do it. Aristotle now in Book 7, chapter 14 onwards, asks how a man is to be educated for citizenship. In other words, how a man is to be morally and intellectually fit to hold office and to behave himself when he's not holding one. Aristotle links the educational process with the psychology on which it is based. He approaches his point by taking the nature of the human soul. It was common knowledge then to consider the soul as a two-sided element, rational and irrational side of the soul. The goal of education affects mainly the rational side. Education of the body and of the appetitive element is also considered in his program. Education should be divided into periods, each one with its respective nutritional and physical training. So you see, it's not only intellectual and academic subjects, let's call them subjects, that he wanted to teach to the young people of the ancient Greece education of physical abilities and habits was also important. His version of Paideia aims to integrity and virtuosity for the proper use of leisure in cultural, intellectual, and political activities. Education, then, is a long-term process, a preparation for leisure, schole, which is again a non-translatable word. Let me share the screen. There you are. Let me maximize it. Okay. However non-translatable, it has to be understood as the noble and worthwhile use of free time, which can only be achieved by the acquisition of excellence, arete, through education. So we see in the screen that the word schole comprises all these concepts and many others at the same time. So it comprises jubilation, peace of mind, intellectual proficiency, soul pleasantness, satisfaction of the superior senses, civilized enjoyment of free time. Schole is essential to achieve the good life of eudaimonia, the happiness, the aim, and the final goal of the Constitution. It is the cultural leisure of an educated man that makes the whole difference between civilized and barbarian life. The legislator does need not to leave loose ends. Legislation is a very serious matter in Aristotle. His legislation should consider both war and peace time. Swords lose fine temper when they are at peace, he said. So it is not enough to think and pass laws only considering war times. After the war, peace will come, and you have to be ready for this. If you're not ready, like swords, you will lose the temper and it will turn you useless. So the laws that the legislator passes are to be useful for wartime and for peacetime. Let me show you the next picture. Sorry, this one. There. There you see a quotation. So the end of war is peace, and leisure is the end of work. This is on book 7, chapter 15. So he starts working with pairs of opposites for his argumentation. So the opposite of work is leisure, schole, but also the opposite of work is rest. But it is not the rest that the legislation should aim to, but leisure, schole. The rest is unproductive, unprolific. Leisure is prolific. So the opposite of war peace. So the end of war again is the peace. There is also a pair of opposites, the useful and noble. We should aim to the noble, not to the useful only. The useful is useful for a particular period of time, but the noble will be always worthwhile. So habit, reason, which is related to appetite and intellectual. So habits should be refined, should be modified according to the reason. And it is also linked, habit, reason, and appetite, intellectual, to the pair of opposite of body and soul. Okay. It's been enough for the second block of our fourth lesson. You are kindly invited now to read chapter 8 of the politics. You will find it in the bibliography link, and remember that your final activity will be a case of resolution, a problematic case. You will have to bring back the non-intellectual measures that we work out, that you thought of at the beginning of our lesson. So I look forward to hear from you in the queries box in case you need some help, some assistance. Remember that I'll be there. See you next class. Enjoy it and have a very good weekend. Bye-bye.